What's up, guys? Welcome to March 23rd as we will be starting in Joshua chapter 3. Early the next morning, Joshua and all the Israelites left Acacia Grove, and arrived at the banks of the Jordan River, where they camped before crossing. 3 days later, the Israelite officers went through the camp giving these instructions to the people. When you see the Levitical priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, move out from your positions and follow them. Since you have never traveled this way before, they will guide you. Stay about a half mile behind them, keeping a clear distance between you and the ark. Make sure you don't come any closer. Then Joshua told the people, purify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do great wonders among you. In the morning, Joshua said to the priest, lift up the Ark of the Covenant and lead the people across the river. And so they started out and went ahead of the people. The Lord told Joshua, today I will begin to make you a great leader in the eyes of the Israelites. They will know that I am with you just as I was with Moses. Give this command to the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant. When you reach the banks of the Jordan River, take a few steps into the river and stop there. So Joshua said to the Israelites, come and listen to what the Lord your God says. Today you will know that the living God is among you. He will surely drive out the Canaanites, Hittites, Hephites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites ahead of you. Look, the Ark of the Covenant, which belongs to the Lord of the whole earth, will lead you across the Jordan River. Now choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. The priests will carry the Ark of the Lord of all the earth. As soon as their feet touch the water, the flow of water will be cut off upstream, and the river will stand up like a wall. So the people left their camp to cross the Jordan, and the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. It was the harvest season, and the Jordan was overflowing its banks. But as soon as the feet of the priests who were carrying the ark touched the water at the river's edge, the priests above the point began backing up a great distance away at a town called Adam, which is near Zarathan, and the water below that point flowed up to the Dead Sea until the riverbed was dry. Then all the people crossed over near the town of Jericho. Meanwhile, the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Lord's Covenant stood on dry ground in the middle of the riverbed. As the people passed by, they waited there until the whole nation of Israel had crossed the Jordan on the dry ground. Chapter 4. When all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, now choose 12 men, one from each tribe. Tell them, take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the river. Carry them out and pile them up at the place where you will camp tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. He told them, go into the middle of the Jordan in front of the Ark of the Lord your God. Each of you must pick up one stone and carry it out on your shoulder. 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. We will use these stones to build a memorial. In the future, your children will ask you, what do these stones mean? Then you can tell them, they remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the Ark of the Lord's Covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever. So the men did as Joshua had commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan River, one for each tribe, just as the Lord had told Joshua. They carried them to the place where they camped for the night and constructed the memorial there. Joshua also set up another pile of 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan at the place where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant were standing, and they are there to this day. The priests who were carrying the ark stood in the middle of the river until all the Lord's commands that Moses had given to Joshua were carried out. Meanwhile, the people hurried across the riverbed, and when everyone was safely on the other side, the priests crossed over with the ark of the Lord as the people watched. The armed The armed warriors from the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh led the Israelites across the Jordan, just as Moses had directed. These armed men, about 40,000 strong, were ready for battle, and the Lord was with them as they crossed over to the plains of Jericho. That day the Lord made Joshua a great leader in the eyes of all the Israelites, and for the rest of his life they revered him as much as they have revered Moses. The Lord had said to Joshua, "Command the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant to come out of the riverbed." So Joshua gave the command. As soon as the priests carrying the Ark of the Lord's covenant came out the riverbed, and their feet were on high ground, the water of the Jordan returned and overflowed its banks as before. The people crossed the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. Then they camped at Gilgal, just east of Jericho. It was there at Gilgal that Joshua piled up the 12 stones taken from the Jordan River. Then Joshua said to the Israelites, "In the future your children will ask, 'What do these stones mean?' Then you will tell them, 'This is where the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground, for the Lord your God dried up the riverbed before your eyes, and he kept it dry until you were across, just as he did at the Red Sea. When he dried it up until we had all crossed over, he did this so all the nations of the earth might know that the Lord's hand is powerful, and so you might fear the Lord your God forever." When all the Amorite kings east of the Jordan and all the Canaanite kings who lived along the Mediterranean coast heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan River so the people of Israel could pass, they lost heart and were paralyzed with fear because of him. At that time the Lord told Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the secondary male population of Israel at Gibeath Haraloth." Joshua had to circumcise them because all the men who were old enough to fight in the battle when they left Egypt had died in the wilderness. Those who left Egypt had all been circumcised, but none of those born from the Exodus during the years in the wilderness had been circumcised. The Israelites have traveled in the wilderness for 40 years until all the men who were old enough to fight in the battle when they left Egypt had died, for they had disobeyed the Lord, and the Lord vowed he would never let them enter the land he had sworn to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So Joshua circumcised their sons, those who have grown up to take their father's places, for they had not been circumcised. They rested in the camp until they were healed. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I will roll away the shame of your slavery in Egypt." So that place was called Gilgal to this day. While the Israelites were camped at Gilgal at the plains of Jericho, they celebrated Passover on the evening of the 14th day of the first month. The very next day they began to eat unleavened bread and roasted grain harvested from the land. No manna appeared on the day they first ate from the crops of the land, and it was never seen again. So from that time on, the Israelites ate from the crops of Canaan. When Joshua was near the town of Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with sword in hand. Joshua went up to him and demanded, "Are you friend or foe?" "Neither one," he replied. "I am the commander of the Lord's army." At this, Joshua fell with his face to the ground in reverence. I took command," Joshua said. What do you want your servant to do?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did as he was told. Chapter 6. Now the gates of Jericho were tightly shut because the people were afraid of the Israelites. No one was allowed to go in or go out or in. But the Lord said to Joshua, I will have given you Jericho, its kingdom, and all its strong warriors. You and your fighting men should march around the town once a day for 6 days. 7 priests will walk ahead on the ark, each carrying a ram's horn. On the 7th day, you are to march around the town 7 times with the priest blowing horns. When you hear the priest giving one last blast on the ram's horns, have all the people shout out as loud as they can. Then the walls of the town will collapse, and the people can charge straight into the town. So Joshua called together the priests and said, Take up the ark of the Lord's covenant, and assigned its 7 priests to walk in front of it, and each carrying a ram's horn. Then he ordered to the people, March around the town, and the armed men will lead the way in front of the ark of the Lord. After Joshua spoke to the people, the 7 priests with the ram's horns started marching in the presence of the Lord, blowing the horns as they marched, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed behind them. Some of the armed men marched in front of the priests with the horns, and some behind the ark with the priests continually blowing the horns. Do not shout, do not even talk, Joshua commanded, for not a single word from any of you until I tell you to shout. Then shout. So the ark of the Lord was carried around the town once that day, and then everyone returned to spend the night in the camp. Joshua got up early in the next morning, and the priests again carried the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests with the ram's horns marched in front of the ark of the Lord, blowing the horns again. The armed men marched both in front of the priest with the horns and behind the ark of the Lord. All this time the priests were blowing their horns. On the 2nd day, they again marched around the town once and returned to the camp. They followed this pattern for 6 days. On the 7th day, the Israelites got up at dawn and marched around the town as they had done before, but this time they went around the town several times. The 7th time around, as the priests sounded the long blast on their horns, Joshua commanded the people, Shout, for the Lord has given you the town. Jericho and everything in it must be completely destroyed. As an offering to the Lord, only Rahab the prostitute and the others in her houses will be spared, for she protected our spies. Do not take any of the things set apart for destruction, or you yourself will be completely destroyed, and you will bring trouble on the camp of Israel. Everything made from silver, gold, bronze, or iron is sacred to the Lord, and everything must be brought into his treasure. When the people heard the sound of the ram's horns, they shouted as loud as they could. Suddenly the walls of Jericho collapsed, and the Israelites charged straight into the town and captured it. They completely destroyed everything in it with their swords, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, goats, and donkeys. Meanwhile, Joshua said to the 2 spies, Keep your promise. Go to the prostitute's house and bring her out along with all her family. The men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab, her father, mother, brothers, and all the other relatives who were with her. They moved her whole heart to a place near the camp of Israel. Then the Israelites burned the town and everything in it. Only the things made from silver, gold, bronze, and iron were kept for the treasury of the Lord's house. So Moses spared Rahab the prostitute, and her relatives were with her in the house, because she had hidden the spies of Joshua spies Joshua sent to Jericho, and she lived among the Israelites to this day. At that time, Joshua invoked this curse. May the curse of the Lord fall on anyone who tries to rebuild the town of Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn son, he will lay his foundation, and in the cost of his youngest son, he will set up its ark. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his reputation spread throughout the land. And so that's the end for today. Excuse me. As I'm trying to look back on some of the things that we read, I think I mentioned this before, but about how God uses even the people who we label as broken, how God is able to use them as well as anybody to get His will done. Like, for example, the prostitute woman, we all see her as a sinful person, and so we don't really want to associate ourselves with her, and we didn't think that God wants anything to do with her. But God, because He's merciful, because He can see beyond our own betrayal of Him, He's still able to love us. He still sees the best of who we are and things. I was trying to think, there was something else that stood out to me, but oh yeah, so you know how it talks about the priest had to go into the water before the Israelites, and something I just realized is whenever we face a problem within our life, we tend to want to go from one person to the other to another, and then from that person to things that could help us through our struggles. And I'm not saying that's bad, but when you start to believe that, and that's the only thing you could depend on, which is drugs and making you feel better, then that's not honoring to God, because God created all of us to serve Him to the best of our abilities. And so if we are going through something that's really hard, maybe be fast to asking God for help instead of looking around. We're distracted with things around us, and that we do not prioritize God as the number one person who can solve all our issues. So I guess just to challenge us all to kind of jump straight to God, asking Him for help instead of just wondering what this person says, or what that person says, or what this person does, or what the other person does. But yeah, our world is filled with so much distractions where we are able to numb ourselves out without really understanding who God is, without really fully heal from whatever hardships that we may all be facing each day and things. But yeah, and the whole idea is whenever, especially as a Christian, if you make a promise, it is so important for us to keep that promise, but not only keep that promise, but be able to do it to the best of our abilities. Because sometimes we could promise whatever, but then we disappoint people. We make up excuses for why we couldn't make it, and that's just an issue that we all need to do a better job of avoiding. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have much else to say. But yeah, and then it's I guess the whole idea is the wall of Jericho is kind of our stubbornness, and sometimes God has to yell at us to get our attention so that those walls hopefully fall. Not everybody who responds yes, Lord, will let down their walls. And so I guess as we kind of end today, something I wanted to ask you guys is, what is something that's kind of a wall in your life right now? That could be with money, that could be with friendships, fame, sexual desires, trying to be like the best version of you, meaning like from the perspective of the world. So again, like what is something that's you really feel like is like blocking this massive wall that's blocking you be able to see God. God can see you, but what is something that's blocking you from being able to see God and experience God and having an intimate relationship with God? But yeah, it's okay to enjoy things within this world, but don't let the things of this world be the ruler of your life. So other than that, I don't have anything else to share, so may you guys go and walk with God today.